Hi, it's Leithia at Farm View Creators. Today we're going to work on part one of our Snowflake barn quilt ladder. I love this project and I'm super excited. So I'm using the backside of my Nativity ladder pieces that I also have a video showing how I did. I am putting a little bit of tape around the edges just to mask it in case any paint kind of drips over the edges. And then I'm going to use an off-centered barn quilt pattern from Barn Quilt Headquarters. I am just kind of figuring out the patterns and the grid lines and trying to figure out exactly how to lay this out on my board. I like to print off my patterns and mark them all up. That's just how I roll. So this one is a 20 by 20 grid. And then it's a little more difficult than that because it's not symmetrical. So it does take me a minute. I had to do some math and figure out exactly how far apart my spacing needed to be on my 12-inch square board. And it was a little difficult. So I ended up putting a piece of tape on my ruler just so that I was making sure I was getting it perfect. And then it still wasn't perfect. One side was a little off, so I just didn't go by that grid at all. I am using a quilting ruler that has those straight lines and those grid marks so that I can make sure that I am squaring up on both sides. And here I'm looking at the pattern and I'm sliding down and marking my lines based on the tick marks that I have around. I do not draw my grid across the whole board. When I first started, I did that a couple of times, and then I started doing it with more of a visualization technique, I guess. And, some of my lines will be a little long, some will be a little short, but I still get the image on the board and I can fix those short and long lines very easily. Now I will tell you that I made a couple mistakes drawing this one out, and I also should not have used my pencil to do this. Pencil marks on your Kills primer is very hard to erase up, and graphite also can show through paint over time. So that was my number one mistake. And I normally don't do that. I think I was just so excited that I didn't use my brain. So there you can actually see a line that needs to be erased, and we will get that. But for the time being, it's okay. So I draw my horizontal and vertical lines first, and then I go in with my diagonals, and you'll see that I'm going back and forth between the pattern and my board, just making sure that I am getting all the diagonals that I need to in one pass of the ruler. That is just a tip to kind of speed up the process, I guess. And I will tell you that I did prime both sides of my board with Kills before I did the nativity, so I didn't have to do that for this project because it was already done. I do just one layer with a roller and after I've sanded the ACM board. So it is aluminum composite board, which is perfect for outdoors. It's not so heavy that it's going to weigh anything down, and it's also not going to rot away like wood would eventually do. I get my ACM from Piedmont Plastics in Greensboro, North Carolina, but they do have locations all around. So now I am putting my tape on, and I want my tape to be slightly beside my lines so that my lines actually get covered with paint. And then when I do my next round of paint colors, I'm going to lay my tape just inside so I can see the edge of that first color. That ensures that I'm not going to have any gaps between my two colors. I'm using my Work Pro utility knife to cut along those lines and pull those up, and then I'll use the remnants that I'm pulling up to kind of fill in those small little pieces. And I'm just going around the entire thing. I do put mine on a Lazy Susan so that I can wiggle and roll it around, which I do a lot, as you can tell. But I also use a weeding tool from Cricut to kind of pull that tape up. A lot of times I'll use my fingernails, but I kind of like my red nails right now and didn't want to mess them up. So it doesn't take long once you get the hang of this. When I first started cutting away the tape so that I could paint all of one color in one pass through, I would have to hold my ruler. And you'll see, and sometimes I'll put my metal ruler up there and cut along the side of it. But I've gotten to the point now with lots of practice that I can pretty much freehand it. So now I'm going to go in with the color Snowbound. This is a Valspar Satin interior paint. I get the samples. They're about $6 at my local hardware store. And I'm doing a very thin coat. And if you noticed, I tried my best to brush away from corners and edges, just because you don't want to brush the paint up to it because then it might go under. But with the frog tape that I use, if you paint alongside, it'll seal it really well. I did 2 coats. Actually, I did 3. I showed you 2, but I did 1 more coat off camera. And now I am using my Cricut tool to pull that up. And there you have all the white. And I love it. There are some blemishes and some spots that will need to be fixed, but a lot of them will be fixed with this next layer. So now I'm basically masking the white that I just finished painting. I did let it dry overnight. I don't like to put tape down on fresh paint. But I am just taping along those sides and then using my utility knife to cut it away, just like I did previously, just the opposite. And this went a lot faster than I thought. I was actually quite worried about, I'm always worried about painting the big backgrounds. I'm not sure why. And then I got smart later on. You know, you have ideas in your brain like as you're doing something, but they come right at the end. And I realized that I could cut my tape in half and not have to cut away on one of the sides of those spokes on the snowflake. So yeah, gotta love it. So there I go, cutting my tape. Much easier. And then I use the corners of some other pieces that I'd already taken up to do the little square notch there. And I'm going to use my Prudy brush and put my Peekaboo Blue, which is also a Valspar interior paint. And as you can see there, I'm brushing away from the edges as much as I possibly can. Sometimes it's really hard not to, but just do your best. And then also try to brush along the edge, and that will seal that frog tape. I do use frog tape. I do not use other brands. I've tried other brands. They do not work as well. And oh my word, I love how this turned out. So now I'm going to go in with my Snowbound, and you can see that there's little spots, little bleeding onto the white. So I am just fixing that up. I have, again, gotten to the point where I can mostly freehand this. And then after that dried completely, I'm going to go in with my Mimwax water-based Spar-urethane. It has to be water-based. If not, it will yellow. And there it is, all dried and hung as the first piece of my ladder. Stay tuned for parts 2, 3, and 4. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like and subscribe.